Mother Nature is going to play a huge part in the baseball series this weekend. We have Derek Vandygriff coming by to tell you all about it, everything you know about the Coral Gables Regional. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. You can follow me at Stephen Willis, at the Stephen Willis down below on Twitter. I like to talk about all kinds of things. I'm liable to make you angry, but that is okay. We're going to have a lot of fun and talk about all the perspectives that we can when it comes to Ole Miss sports. Should be a lot of fun. Anyway, before we get started, I do want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Also, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go ahead and hit the bell for notifications when we upload a new video, which is actually quite frequently. And of course, upvote the video itself if we get to 1,000 subscribers, which we are going to do by football season. I have no doubt about that. But if we do it, we will do post-game live, and we'll do live post-game shows of every Ole Miss football game. We'll have a chat module over here. You can participate in it. We can all talk about the things in that game that interested and things we wanted to talk about. Anyway, before I get started real quick, I forgot to put him in here real quick, but we're going to bring him in just a second. Derek Vandygriff talking all about Ole Miss Baseball. I'm still adjusting it on the fly, so he will be on the screen in just a second. I do promise that. But it should be a lot of fun when he gets here. I'm really excited. There he is, Derek Vandygriff, to talk about Ole Miss Baseball and the Coral Gables Regional this weekend. I can't believe I forgot to set that up before we got started. I'm sorry, Derek.
That's all right.
But Derek, you reached out to me early this week wanting to do this show, so I thought maybe we could do something kind of fun, do a full episode thing, and I know we tell everybody that we always have an episode of football. The way we're going to get around it this show is we're going to do an extra video with Tom Vanderford to where he's talking just about Ole Miss football, but this show is going to be about Ole Miss baseball. And what are your first impressions of this regional?
Oh, well, it's kind of interesting, in college baseball, probably more than any other sports, about who gets hot at the right time. You saw it with North Carolina State last year. They got real hot and was able to run through the regionals and supers, and quite frankly, may have ended up winning the whole thing if they didn't get hit with COVID and get kicked out of the College World Series, And this one's kind of interesting because you've got Miami and Arizona, the top two seeds in this regional, who have both are under 500 in their last 10 games. They're both 4-6, while Ole Miss and Canisius are both 7-3 in their last 10 games. So the two lower seeds are actually, by record, playing the better baseball right now. It should be a lot of fun if we can get Mother Nature to cooperate with us a little bit, which looks like we're going to be able to get a couple games in Friday. Saturday might get a little hairy, but then hopefully we can take off from there.
Yeah, what it looks like to me, and I'm actually down here now. For those that don't know, I do this show from about 2.5 hours from Coral Gables. So we're following a tropical system coming into Florida, paying attention to it quite regularly. Now, while it was far away, you could not make justifications, and it could still turn one way or another to where basically there could be no rain. But the way I see it right now is they should be able to get the games in Friday. Saturday looks like it might be a wash, but then you have Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday if necessary to get them in. It looks like they're going to get them all in.
Yeah. I think we'll end up getting all of them in. Hopefully we don't have to go to that seventh game. That's always a bit of a heart attack waiting to happen for Rebel fans, the way things have gone for us. But it's going to be a lot of fun. First up is Arizona, a team that we're obviously really familiar with, even though they look a lot different than last year, and we don't look all that different as far as the hitters we have, but it's definitely a different team with the way they're playing and our strengths and weaknesses just like they are, So it's going to be a lot of fun. Really see Dilly can do out there. You know, he hadn't pitched since last Tuesday in the SEC tournament, so he's going to be well rested. You know, I fully expect to see him go out there for 110, 115 pitches. You know, just like he's done when he put us on his back and kind of carried us into this regional, really. So I'm real excited about that. Arizona, you know, they're throwing Garrett Irvin, same guy we saw last year in the Super Regional. You know, so it's a guy we're familiar with. You know, he's had a pretty good year this year, but we knocked him around pretty good last year. Gave up 7 earned, 7 hits. I think he only ended up recording 4 outs that game. So hopefully the Rebels can get after him again this year. He's a lefty. We've struggled a little bit with lefties this year, and that can probably go into the next game too, because if I was to guess, I would say Miami probably holds Palmquist their ace. They haven't announced one yet. They're waiting for Canisius to announce their starter, they say, but I would be very surprised if they end up throwing Palmquist out there against them. So, you know, if we end up beating Arizona, we're probably going to see back-to-back lefties, and there's no better time to remedy that than right now in the regionals, and just start teeing off on a couple lefties, get this thing started, and get to 2-0.
You know, historically, Mike Bianco, he loves to do the right-left thing. Whenever there's a lefty on the hill, he wants to fill the lineup with the right-handers. But when he can't, like that LSU game to where they came in and threw one pitch and the lineup was set with all lefties and they brought a lefty in there, they kind of teed off on him a little bit. It kind of backfires more than you would expect it to.
Yeah. You know, I mean, baseball's such a random sport too, though. You know, you try to play the numbers as much as you can, try to get the best matchups. But really, you throw your guys out there, and you know their backs are against the wall right now. You know, this is it. This is our last chance. You know, we've had chance after chance after chance this year, and they've made just good enough on it to be able to get into the field. And I expect when we throw them out there, then they're going to be able to tee off on them. You know, you got lefties, Gonzalez and Graham. Obviously, they're not going anywhere in the lineup, but they hit lefties good enough. The power number is a little down against lefties, but they still do fine. And you know, they draw their walks and all that. Probably the one you see getting taken out most against lefties is Leverwood, right? You know, he's really struggled against them to the point where I can understand sitting him against lefties. But you know, he's an upgrade in the outfield though, which is probably help us overall. You know, if he could just hit lefties a little bit better, and maybe that's something he's willing to deal with in this region. You know, go ahead and put a little bit better defender out there and sacrifice the bat. But I think we'll get after Irvin pretty good though, and something about all these teams, you know, they all have a pretty decent number 1 starter, but anything after that, as far as game 2, game 3 starters and all that, you know, Ole Miss probably has the best game 2 starter in Hunter Elliott in the entire regional. It really falls off for these 3 clubs after that. Some good bullpen arms though. That's something you got to worry about. But I think Ole Miss will be able to hang in there with them too when it comes to the bullpen.
Okay, before we go to our first break, I do want to ask you this, because the second segment I do want to talk about Arizona in specific and Miami.
Okay.
And then in segment 3, I think we should talk about Ole Miss and expectations in this regional going forward. But before we get started with that, you did mention Canisius has a little bit of an ace. Tell me a little bit about him. What do you know about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's not like that big ace you worry about from a 4 seed, you know, coming into a regional, but he's been fine, 8-2, 3.67 ERA. You know, he doesn't have a big arm or anything. More than anything, they hit it around a good bit. They've got a really, really good second baseman. He was the MAC Player of the Year. He started all 52 games this year and ended up hitting .404 for the entire year, 1148 OPS, 10 home runs, 7 stolen bases. I mean, he's a really good all-around hitter. They've got a guy in the bullpen, Peyton Consigli. He was the rookie and reliever of the year in the MAC. You know, he's pretty good arm, 3.15 ERA, 7 saves. I mean, he's done fine. But Matt Duffy, that's who I would expect you to see against Miami come Friday morning. He's pitched pretty well, and you know, it's always dangerous if you hold your ace out like Miami's talking about doing. You know, I mean, you've seen it come back and bite people before, and if that happens, then the Hurricanes might end up being in trouble because Canisius can get after you with bats.
Yeah. Yeah, and if for some reason there was an upset in that Canisius game, with him being there in the losers bracket, whoever lost that Ole Miss Arizona game would absolutely be huge. But anyway, let's hear from our sponsors at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports information. Find out all of the latest sports developments, news, odds, and including college football futures. You know, Ole Miss is a 21.5-point favorite over the Troy Trojans going into week one. Also, the over-under on regular season wins is at 7.5. Do you agree? Do you disagree? You go to betonline.net and tell them exactly what you think. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we have an important favor to ask of you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you, and you can make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and what you don't like about the Locked On podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thanks for your help. Okay, segment one, we talked a little bit about kind of big picture stuff, weather, even got down to the Canisius ace, the Golden Griffins ace. Now we're going to spend the second segment talking about Arizona and Miami, who are, you would put them as the biggest competition for Ole Miss in this regional. And we will start with Miami. Tell me what you got about the Hurricanes.
Oh yeah, we talked about it a little bit in the first segment. Carson Palmquist, he's a legit ace. He was an All ACC pitcher, 9-4, 108 strikeouts in 78 innings. He doesn't have that big fastball, that big mid 90s, upper 90s, just gonna blow it by you. He's a little craftier, works different pitches in there, just keeps you off balance. But they've got a closer that nobody wants to see. Andrew Walter's probably the best of the entire country. He's given up a 100 batting average to opponents on the entire season. I mean, he doesn't give up hits. He's only walked 5 people all year in 30 innings, so he's not walking. He's not giving up hits. So obviously he's got a 1.20 ERA, right? I mean, this is not the guy you want to see come into the game when you're behind, because you're more than likely not going to make up any room. With him, he struck out 57 in 30 innings. I mean, just an incredible pitcher. They've got a couple of pretty good arms out of the bullpen. Ronaldo Gallo, he's struck out 40 in 34 innings. And then Alex McFarland, 63 and 42. So they got some strikeout guys in there, which we've had our own trouble with strikeouts this year. But after Palmquist starting rotation, there's just really not a whole lot there. Carson Ligon, he's their number 2 guy, but he's only pitched to a 4.50 ERA, 67 strikeouts in 74 innings. Those are the kind of pitchers that you can see us teeing off on, and kind of like I said in the first segment, that's kind of across the board with all these teams, Arizona, Canisius, and Miami. When you get past that first guy, they're really, really vulnerable to give up a lot of runs. Now, Miami runs a lot, though. They steal a bunch of bases. They've got C.J. Kafis at first base. He's 369, but he's 16 for 20 stealing. He's got 7 home runs. He walks more than he strikes out. He's just had a really good year. Jacob Burke in center field, he's hitting 351 with 12 home runs. And then they've got a really good young third baseman, Yohandy Morales. He's a projected first-round pick next year. He's hit 323 with 14 home runs, 1009 OPS. They've got bats up and down the lineup that kind of scare you a little bit, which they're number 6 overall national seed. So, they've got players on that roster up and down. They went through some crazy stretch in the ACC where they won like 12 or so straight games. I mean, they were just sweeping everybody and then just kind of faltered a little bit down the stretch. But like I said, it does show you that they do have that talent, and it's definitely going to be tough to go down there and take that regional from them. They're going to give it all they got.
Okay, before we move on, do you know what happened to them in the last 10 games? Well, you mentioned they were sweeping everybody, then they had this little dip in form. Was it who they were playing against? What do you think happened there?
Yeah, well, it's just kind kind of like the ebbs and flows of a baseball season. You know, when you get that hot and you go on a run like that, unless your name's Tennessee, there's going to be a dip coming at some point, you know, and that's just kind of what it was. You know, they got to the ACC tournament, and ACC's a pretty good baseball league, you know, so they ran into NC State and Wake Forest and ended up getting put out, and those are two good clubs in their own rights, you know. So it was just a little bit of a dip for them. Nothing major happened to them, no big injuries. They just weren't able to finish games and pitch the way they were earlier in the year, you know, but that was back during the regular season. This is entirely different now. This is regional play, and, you know, they're going to be able to put it all behind them, and you're probably going to get their best playing in their home stadium.
All right, let's move on to Arizona. No Jay Johnson, no Jacob Berry, no Riley Cooper, but still, this is a pretty good baseball club. Tell me a little about them.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely a lot different than what you saw last year. You know, when going into the Supers, when you look up and down that lineup, you know, you see 1,000 OPSs through the first, I think, 7 or 8 batters last year with their lineup. I mean, it was just something insane, you know, and people hitting anywhere from 320 all the way up to 400 in those slots too. You know, it's not quite that outrageous this year. I think they only have 3 guys hitting over 300 this year. Only 3 with 10 or more home runs, but you know, they're still a very, very good ball team. You know, they got that catcher, Daniel Suzak, who we got all we wanted last year out of him, you know, and I don't think he stopped hitting since that Super Regional. He sure didn't this year. He's hitting 367, 12 home runs, and then 19 doubles on top of that. You know, he's just an extra base machine, and you know, that's kind of the thing with this Arizona club. Tanner Trimble out in the outfield's the same way. He's at 351, 10 homers, and then 18 more doubles on top of that. Kind of like last year, they don't run a whole lot, so that's not really a big concern for us. But, you know, Garrett Irvin, he kind of got bumped from the Friday night role down to the Saturday night role. Here in the last month, they started putting TJ Nichols in that ace slot. But for this regional, they're going back to Garrett Irvin. I don't know if maybe it's a familiarity thing with him seeing us last year. Like I said, we were able to tee off on him last year, but he's had a good year this year, you know, 3.22 ERA. And then TJ Nichols, the guy that'll start game 2 for him, which I know won't be against us. He'd moved up to that Friday night role, but overall hasn't had that great of a year. He still has a 5.51 ERA, 80 strikeouts in 83 innings, so I mean, he's a decent strikeout pitcher. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot different than what we saw last year, but it's still a very dangerous club and one you don't need to take lightly, especially with the top 3, 4 in that order, because they can send it out of the ballpark in a hurry. Just in that little wind, it just doesn't go all the way down to spot 7 or 8 like it did last year. So that's the difference.
Okay, this is one question that I actually have when it comes to Arizona. How will Arizona do whenever the air is thick enough that you can basically drink it? You basically, because playing in that, I guess that huge stadium in Tucson, but the air is so thin and the elevation's there, and that you can't tell me that doesn't help them out. And then you come down to Miami where it's going to be 60, 70, 80% humidity. The ball's not going to travel the same way. The curveball's not going to be the same. I mean, I think the Arizona pitchers could have a problem with control. That's one thing that I'm wondering about.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. You know, you see it a lot in the major leagues. You know, when pitchers go out to Colorado, you know, the thinness of the air, you know, the pitches don't move the same. The ball just carries and carries and carries. And, you know, you don't get that down here in the South. Like I said, you get 70, 80, sometimes 90% humidity, and the ball just doesn't sit there and fly 450 feet when you tap it. So that will be interesting to see how their pitchers adjust. And on top of that, you know, kind of see how their endurance is a little bit, because, you know, it's a little different heat from Arizona when it's 100 out there as opposed to when it's 100 in Miami or, you know, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi. You know, it's a lot different with that humidity, and see if they're able to go as long as they were able to, see if they wear out a little bit earlier. So that'll definitely be something worth watching.
Yeah, and on top of everything else where the control doesn't work, all of a sudden you're actually sweating because of the heat.
Yeah.
As opposed out to Arizona. So it feels a little bit differently. There's a lot of stuff that can happen. I'm not saying it will. I'm saying that it's on the table. I mean, I like Arizona as a program. I like Miami as a program. I like Ole Miss. Any of the 3 can win this regional. And I just wouldn't be totally surprised. Anyway, we're going to hear from a couple of our sponsors real quick, and then we'll be right back with Ole Miss's outlook in the Coral Gables Regional. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including iTunes. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. You can say whatever you want to say. Just give us a 5-star review. That'll help others find our show in the future. And we have great guests like Derek Vandygriff. You can say, hey, Steve doesn't know what he's talking about, but Derek is right on point. And that is absolutely true. So, Derek, we're going to talk a little bit this segment about Ole Miss and what they have going into this regional. We talked about like big picture stuff in the first segment. The second one we did all Arizona and Miami. Now we're going to do all Ole Miss. Now, how does this regional set up for the Ole Miss Rebels?
Well, I mean, you're just happy to get in first and foremost with the season we had. We just keep getting chance after chance after chance, and this is the last one. But this isn't a bad regional for us. It's an Arizona club that's, while they're good, they're not what they were last year. Miami was playing very good this year, and they may be able to flip that switch and just turn it right back on for them. But we can throw DeLucia against Arizona, and then getting Hunter Elliott out there for Saturday if Miami is able to beat Canisius, which I'm feel pretty confident about. But the first two starters for Ole Miss is key, just like it has been all year for the weekend for us. Missouri, LSU, even A&M. But we need good starts out of Elliott and DeLucia. Those are the two games we got to win. Those are ones we can't drop and then go into a must-win game with Derek Diamond starting, and then you got to figure out who you're saving out of the bullpen. Against Arizona, one thing that's going to hurt is we don't have John Gaddis for that first game. He's still serving that one more game suspension since we couldn't advance in Hoover. So that's going to shorten our bullpen up a little bit. But with DeLucia on the mound, you're hoping he goes 7-8 innings, bring in Brandon Johnson, close things out, get to the second game, get to Hunter Elliott, and then you've got your full bullpen with everybody available. It'll just be interesting to see how Mike handles the pitching with Gaddis, Washburn, Doherty, Josh Mallets, those kind of guys, because in the back of your mind, even though you hope you don't get there, you hope you win 3 games and you're done with this thing. But you always got to have in the back of your mind, hey, what happens if I have to play that 4th game? Who am I going to start after Derek Diamond, or if I have to play another game after that? Which would be kind of interesting, and really Mother Nature might give us a little bit of a break, because that if this thing drags out all the way to Tuesday and Ole Miss is playing, Mike Bianco's going to throw Dylan DeLucia back out there after throwing on Friday. There's not a doubt.
I think so as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he can get 3 full days of rest, that being his 4th day, the day that he would start, he would go right up to Mike, and he'd pull the Christian Trent, and he'd say, look, give me the ball and get out of my way, because this one's mine. So that might help us a little bit, really. But that's why I'm really interested in this weekend, seeing what he does with the bullpen, how he's able to maneuver it and possibly save a starter. I'm sure he's got somebody in mind if it were to get to that point. But at the same time, you also need to keep throwing your best guys out there, because you also have to get to that point to be able to use them in the first place. So I wouldn't imagine anybody's off the table these first couple games, but it'll definitely be interesting to see how he's able to maneuver that throughout the entire weekend.
Yeah, and everybody needs to remember also basically the introduction to Dylan DeLucia as a dominant player was against Central Florida, playing in the humidity down here. And if he can replicate that, I think he's a Florida kid as well. So he is acclimatized to this weather as good as you can get.
Yeah. He pitched great down there earlier. He's pitched good for us all year that he started. He's just one of those guys that doesn't really do well coming out of the bullpen. He struggled against Tennessee, and then earlier in the year before he was actually even in the starting rotation. So he's just a guy that wants the ball in the first inning and just get out of his way and let him do his work and let him pump his. It seems like he's got 3 different fastballs the way that thing moves. He's got one that'll run in, and another one that almost cuts a little bit, and then a sinker too. It's a lot of fun watching him pitch. It's a lot like Lance Lynn. You know, Lance Lynn's up in the major leagues using literally three fastballs.
Yeah.
Outs, you know, it's incredible. So yeah, he's a lot of fun to watch pitch. I'm really excited to see him get out there, see what he can do. Hopefully, he can give us 7-8 innings. Like I said, Brandon Johnson come in, close things out, set our bullpen up a little bit, and then hopefully this is when our bats come alive. You know, we talk a little bit about how this isn't the same Ole Miss team, even though it's got a lot of the same players up and down the lineup offensively from last year. But it's always in the back of your head, you know, if it ever just clicks for them, you know the talent's there because we've seen it. We've seen them do it. We've seen them bomb people out of stadiums before. And so hopefully this will be when it clicks for us. And Gonzalez has had such bad luck for as far as BABIP goes and stuff. You know, the ball's in play. I think he's only hitting like 280. You know, usually that thing's up around 360, 370, especially at the college level. So that tells you he's had a little bit of bad luck. So hopefully that'll swing his way a little bit. But I think he's definitely got the construction of the lineup down, though. You know, since you got bench at leadoff, Gonzalez at 2, and then Elko and Graham. I saw a stat the other day about Kevin Graham. Since like May 10th, he's hitting exactly 500. I think it was like 23 for 46. I know me and you've talked about it a couple times over the last couple of weeks about how it looks like his swing's back. You know, he's getting back to that guy that we saw all last year and pre-injury this year. So that's real big for us. Obviously, my main man, Kemp Alderman, I've got to mention him every single week. I'm really looking forward to see what he can do down there. You know, it can be a really, really, really dangerous lineup if they ever get clicking, and it's now or never now. Now they either get clicking or this will be forever remembered as the year that we had potentially the best offense in the country coming back that just underperformed in the biggest way you could ever imagine.
Yeah, a point and a question. My point is we have to see which way the way that field is situated and the way the wind is blowing, because the wind will be blowing Friday before that game, trying to get in. So if it's in and probably in from right, that probably doesn't bode well for Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss can do well if it's blowing in from left, because I don't think any wind's going to stop a Tim Elko home run to start with. But in right field with Jacob Gonzalez and that is just something to keep an eye on. But my question is, before we get out of here, Mike Bianco's teams have played tight at time to time in the postseason.
Yeah.
Do you think this year is any different with the way they got in and all the circumstances around this team?
Well, no, I think if anything, it kind of plays into their favor and loosens them up a little bit. You know, I don't know if you've seen the videos from, you know, them getting selected to them getting down to Miami and practice and all that. I mean, they look like a really, really loose team that's having a lot of fun out there, you know, maybe just, you know, probably relieved that they're actually getting to play baseball again. So I expect them to be good and loose for the entire weekend in this regional and moving forward. Because, you know, they kind of got a gift, honestly. You know, I mean, it's you do play your way in it, and if you don't make it, it's your fault. And if you did make it, then that's your success too. But, you know, we were the last team in, and so we were able to hopefully harness that and play good and loose and play good baseball. And I expect the same thing from Mike Bianco as far as him managing it too.
All right. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Rafael Barlow, Richard Strayman, Sam Ferris, and Leif Tholen give their fans an in-depth look at the biggest prospects, the latest player rankings, and, of course, big boards. Follow the NBA Big Board every day on the Audacity app, the YouTube app, and wherever you get your podcast. Derek, thank you so much for this special edition. I know we hit you up twice this week, and, of course, after it's all over, I look forward to talking to you and kind of wrapping it all up.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right.
Hi, Toddy, bud.
Howdy, Toddy.